In the midst of Ukraine's war-torn landscapes, the echoes of conflict reverberate through empty classrooms and shattered schools. Young students, who should be focused on their education, are now caught in the crossfire of uncertainty and danger. In the midst of an ongoing war, Ukraine's future generation faces a challenge unlike any other, balancing their education with the threat of war. Over 600,000 children are studying remotely, displaced from their homes and communities, while young men like Oleksandr Maisan must navigate an equally difficult decision to stay and fight or flee in search of a future elsewhere. The war that began in February 2022 with Russia's invasion has not only shattered Ukraine's infrastructure but also disrupted its education system. Many schools are now forced to operate with bomb shelters, and children in frontline cities must study under the constant threat of attacks. While education is a right, survival becomes a priority. So, what does this mean for Ukraine's future? How will these young people navigating both the education system and the fear of war shape the post-war labor force? This situation echoes a deeper issue. With the war pushing thousands of young men and women out of the country, Ukraine faces a severe labor shortage. The students of today are meant to be the workforce of tomorrow, but what happens when that pipeline is interrupted by conflict? While many young Ukrainians like Oleksandr fled to neighboring countries to avoid conscription, others like Maxim Semidotsky have returned to help rebuild the country. Maxim dreams of helping reconstruct his war-torn hometown of Kherson, and he's not alone. But with a lack of proper education and continuous disruptions, will Ukraine have the skilled workforce it needs? This war has not only displaced Ukraine's workforce but also its youngest learners. Nearly 800,000 children are currently integrated into EU schools, while many continue to study online through Ukrainian education programs. For those still in Ukraine, face-to-face learning often isn't an option, and the few in-person schools left must adhere to strict safety protocols, including the availability of nearby bomb shelters. But beyond education, there's another serious risk: safety from mines and unexploded ordnance. A significant number of children, especially boys between the ages of 14 and 17, are at risk of engaging in dangerous behaviors in areas heavily mined. While over 90% of children have received mine safety training, high awareness doesn't always lead to safe practices. For those in these high-risk areas, the stakes are terrifyingly high. This not only affects their present lives but also their future prospects as they face both psychological and educational disruptions. The question now is, what can be done to bridge this educational gap while ensuring the safety of Ukraine's youngest generation? And how can the country address its growing labor shortage? According to surveys, 30% of Ukrainians report a significant shortage of professionals, and this issue will only become more pressing as the conflict continues. The Ukrainian government has already taken steps, with President Zelensky promising better conditions for young people, such as education scholarships and housing benefits. However, with many families displaced and regions still under siege, the challenge remains enormous. Ukraine's recovery isn't just about rebuilding infrastructure, it's about reconstructing an entire generation that has been forced to choose between education and survival, between fighting for their homeland or fleeing in search of a safer future. The young people of Ukraine hold the keys to their country's future, but for many, that future feels uncertain. The war has scattered Ukraine's youth across the world, and the challenge will be to not only bring them back, but to ensure they are prepared to rebuild. As Ukraine continues its fight for freedom, its young generation must be at the center of the nation's recovery. Education, safety, and labor resources will be the pillars that support Ukraine's post-war future. The question is, will the world help them meet this challenge? Or will Ukraine's next generation remain scattered, divided by war? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and stay connected to more insightful analyses like this one.